Welcome to this deep dive,
Oh, cool.
all about resilience.
Okay.
We're going to be exploring what it really means to bounce back from tough times,
Okay.
using a mix of insightful podcast clips and notes that you shared with us.
hmm
Plus, we'll hear the story of someone who embodies this concept,
Okay.
Sophie Mayank.
All right.
Her journey just might change how you think about facing challenges.
Yeah. It's interesting because while resilience is kind of a popular buzzword these days,
Right.
it's easy to forget that it's about real people and their experiences.
Yeah.
I think Sophie's story will really ground us in the human side of this concept.
Yeah, I'm already intrigued, but
Yeah.
before we get swept away by her story,
Mm-hmm.
what exactly is resilience? I know it's about bouncing back,
Right.
but there's got to be more to it, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's more than just springing back to your original shape, like a rubber band or something.
Oh.
Resilience is about adapting,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even transforming because of what you go through. It's the ability to not just survive difficulty, but to learn and grow and even thrive because of it.
So it's almost like leveling up in a video game.
Yeah.
You get knocked down, but you come back stronger and with new skills.
Exactly. And that's where Sophie Mayank's story comes in.
Okay.
She's a prime example of how resilience isn't just a theory, it's a lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't have all the nitty-gritty details of her struggles up front,
Okay.
but a few clues make her story really captivating.
Right.
In the podcast, she starts by saying, Bonjour et bienvenue à tous. Merci d'avoir honoré mon invitation.
Okay. Color me intrigued.
Right.
Who casually drops French greetings into a podcast.
I know.
Makes me think she has kind of a fascinating background and a global perspective,
Yeah, for sure.
even without knowing the specifics of her challenges. You could already sense this strength and openness in her voice.
Absolutely.
Then she says something really thought-provoking.
Oh, yeah.
Face à cette épreuve, j'ai compris que la clé était de rester positif et de voir cela comme une opportunité de croissance.
Wow.
She faced a serious trial, but chose to see it as a chance to grow.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to shift your thinking like that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's not about pretending everything is okay,
Right.
but actively seeking out the potential for learning and development within a tough situation.
Yeah.
Sophie's approach speaks to a key aspect of resilience,
Okay.
the power of perspective.
So rather than drowning in the negative, she's looking for the life raft of opportunity.
Exactly.
I'm hooked.
Good.
Can we dive into what challenges Sophie actually faced?
Well, the podcast is a bit mysterious there.
Okay.
It mentions a critical moment in her career
Mhm.
and another point where she felt completely lost.
Oh.
So we can speculate she might have dealt with professional setbacks, maybe even a job loss or a business failure.
Those are definitely blows that would test anyone's resilience.
For sure.
Did they mention anything about health issues or personal losses? Life can throw those curveballs too.
Yeah, they didn't get into specifics, but it's definitely possible those were part of her story, too.
Right.
What's fascinating is that even without knowing the exact nature of her challenges,
Mm-hmm.
we can still learn from how she coped.
That's what I love about these deep dives.
Yeah,
It's like a puzzle where we get to piece together the insights.
exactly.
So knowing Sophie went through all this,
Mm-hmm.
how did she manage to overcome it? Was there some secret formula?
There's no magic formula,
Okay.
but there are definitely patterns in how resilient people navigate hardship.
Okay.
And Sophie gives us some clues in her own words.
Right.
She says, Ce moment m'a permis de réévaluer mes priorités et de me recentrer sur ce qui compte vraiment.
Whoa. It sounds like she used that difficult time to really reassess what mattered most.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of us can relate to that feeling of needing a major shakeup
Mm-hmm.
to reevaluate our priorities.
Yeah,
Have you ever experienced that?
absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the daily grind and
Mm.
lose sight of what truly matters.
For sure.
Sometimes it takes a challenging experience to force us to pause,
Mm-hmm.
reflect, and make necessary adjustments.
Right.
But it's not just about letting go.
Go.
Sophie's story also highlights the importance of finding new direction.
I'm all ears.
Yeah.
How did she find that new direction amidst all the turmoil? Did she have any specific aha moments or strategies?
She did. She says, Ces épreuves m'ont rendue plus forte et plus déterminée à avancer. So instead of letting those hardships break her, they actually fueled her determination to move forward.
Okay, that's a seriously powerful mindset. But I have to ask, how do you go from feeling lost to finding that kind of strength and determination, especially when it feels like everything is falling apart?
That's where the real meat of resilience comes in. And luckily, Sophie's experience and the research point to some key factors that anyone can cultivate.
Okay.
It's not just about personality, it's about building skills.
I love that resilience is a skill set. It makes it feel so much more attainable.
Right.
What's the first thing we can work on?
One of the most crucial things is social support. Okay.
The podcast emphasizes having a strong network of family, friends, mentors, or even a supportive online community can make all the difference.
So it's like having a team of superheroes backing you up even when you feel like you're facing your own personal doomsday.
Exactly. Those connections provide a buffer against stress, remind you that you're not alone, and can offer practical help too.
Yeah.
Even though we don't have specific examples of Sophie's support system,
Right.
it's likely that those connections played a role in her story.
That makes me think of a question I saw in the research materials you shared.
Oh, yeah.
Someone asked, what is resilience? Such a basic question, but sometimes we need those reminders.
It is, and it highlights why stories like Sophie's are so important.
Yeah.
We can talk about the definition all day, that it's the ability to bounce back from setbacks, adapt, and keep moving forward.
Right.
But seeing it in action through someone's experience makes it click on a deeper level.
It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually tasting the delicious dish.
I like that analogy. Okay, so we've got social support as one ingredient in our resilience recipe.
All right.
What else is on the list?
Next up is optimism.
Okay.
And, a lot of people might roll their eyes at this one thinking it's about being unrealistically positive. But true optimism, the kind Sophie demonstrates, isn't about ignoring the negative.
It sounds like it's more about choosing where you focus your energy.
Right? Exactly. It's about recognizing that within every challenge, there's potential for growth and learning.
Yeah.
Sophie's quote about seeing her trial as an opportunity for growth is a perfect example of this.
That actually reminds me of another question from the research. Who is Sophie Mayank and why is she mentioned in this podcast? It's pretty clear why she's a real-life resilience superhero.
Right. She's not some theoretical figure. She's a person who faced real struggles and found a way to not just survive, but thrive.
Yeah.
Her story serves as a reminder that resilience is attainable for anyone.
Okay, back to our list. What comes after optimism?
Stress management. And this one is huge because chronic stress can wear down our resilience over time.
Ugh, tell me about it.
It depletes our mental and emotional resources, making it harder to bounce back from setbacks.
Stress can feel like a constant weight, making everything feel harder. Do you have any go-to stress-busting strategies?
Absolutely. Mindfulness practices, exercise, spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones.
Okay.
These are all great ways to manage stress.
Yeah.
But it's also about recognizing your personal triggers and developing coping mechanisms that work for you.
It's like building your own personalized stress-fighting toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a much better image than constantly feeling weighed down.
Right. And it's something you can build over time. Speaking of building, the next element of resilience is a bit more introspective.
Okay.
Finding meaning in adversity.
Yeah, that sounds deep.
Yeah.
How do you find meaning when you're in the thick of a difficult experience? Isn't it more natural to just want to escape the pain?
It's definitely not easy, but it's incredibly powerful.
Okay.
It's about asking yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to help others? What strengths did I discover that I didn't know I had?
That actually makes me think about another question someone asked. What specific challenges did Sophie Mayank encounter? We've been dancing around that mystery for a while now.
And it's interesting how much we can learn from her story without knowing all the specifics.
Yeah.
It allows each listener to relate to her experiences in their own way,
Right.
perhaps reflecting on their own challenges and how they've navigated them.
So even though the podcast doesn't lay out all the details of her struggles, we can still connect with the core of her resilience.
Exactly. And it's through her responses to hardship that we see the power of finding meaning. Remember her quote about reevaluating priorities and focusing on what truly matters. That's a perfect example of extracting meaning from difficulty.
It's like she went through a refining fire and emerged with a clearer sense of purpose. Okay, we've talked about social support, optimism, stress management, and finding meaning. What's the final piece of this resilience puzzle?
The last piece, but certainly not the least, is perseverance.
Okay.
It's that gritty determination to keep going,
Yes.
even when faced with setbacks and obstacles.
It sounds like that never give up attitude we see in movies, but in real life it can't be that simple, can it?
You're right. It's not about blindly pushing forward.
Okay.
Perseverance is more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that setbacks are a natural part of the journey.
Yeah.
It's about having the courage to try again, even when you've been knocked down.
So it's less about brute force and more about strategic, resilient action.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about learning from your mistakes, adapting your approach, and finding new ways to move towards your goals.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Sophie didn't just magically bounce back from her challenges.
Right.
She actively chose to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Her quote about those trials making her stronger and more determined speaks volumes about the power of perseverance.
It's like she transformed those setbacks into fuel for her journey. That makes me think someone in the research asked, how did Sophie Mayank overcome her difficulties? It seems like the answer is a combination of all these factors we've been discussing.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
It's not any one thing in isolation.
Right.
It's the synergy of social support, optimism, stress management, finding meaning and perseverance that creates true resilience.
It's like a recipe where each ingredient plays a crucial role in creating that delicious final outcome. Speaking of outcomes, the research also touched on resilience in a broader context.
Oh, yeah.
It mentioned companies that reinvented themselves after tough times.
That's a great point. Resilience isn't just for individuals, it's essential for organizations, too.
Yeah.
Think about businesses that have adapted to changing markets,
Right.
or even entire industries that have had to completely reinvent themselves.
It makes you wonder, what are some examples of companies that have demonstrated this kind of resilience in action? Could be a fun thought experiment for our listeners to try.
Absolutely. I'd encourage everyone listening to consider those examples.
Okay.
Think about the companies that faced near collapse but found a way to innovate and bounce back. What lessons can we learn from their stories?
It's like real-world case studies in resilience.
Hmm.
But before we send everyone off on their research mission, there was one more question that came up. What are some key quotes from Sophie Mayank that illustrate her resilience? I have to admit, I love a good, inspiring quote.
I do too. And Sophie provides some gems.
Oh, good.
One that particularly resonates with me is face à cette épreuve, j'ai compris que la clé était de rester positif et de voir cela comme une opportunité de croissance. It speaks to the power of choosing your perspective, even in the face of adversity.
It's a reminder that even when things feel bleak, we still have the power to choose how we respond. Do you have any other favorite quotes from Sophie?
Another one that stands out is Ce moment m'a permis de réévaluer mes priorités et de me recentrer sur ce qui compte vraiment. It highlights the transformative potential of challenging experiences. Sometimes those difficult moments force us to reevaluate what truly matters and make necessary changes.
It's like those trials become catalysts for growth, pushing us towards a more authentic and fulfilling life. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to revisit that list of key factors that promote resilience one last time, just to solidify them in everyone's minds.
Absolutely. To recap, we have social support, optimism, stress management, finding meaning in adversity, and perseverance. These are the pillars of resilience that can help you navigate any challenge life throws your way.
It's an empowering thought, isn't it? That we all have the capacity to cultivate these skills and become more resilient versions of ourselves.
For sure.
So to everyone listening, as you go about your day, remember this. Resilience isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about equipping yourself with the tools and mindset to overcome them and emerge stronger on the other side.
And one last thing, remember that AI animated video of Sophie Mayank that we mentioned? I encourage you to see if you can track it down online. It might offer even more insights into her inspiring story.
That sounds like a fun challenge. It's a perfect way to put your newfound resilience skills into action. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep building that resilience muscle.